Love. It's on all of our minds today. It's on all of our hearts today. Love. This holiday completely and totally devoted to love. And if we're honest, love is kind of a weird thing. We're obsessed with it. We'll pay any price to get it. We're shattered if we lose it. Love is this thing that is often on our hearts and our minds, even if it's not romantic love. The video we just watched was this collection of different people talking about love, and some of them were married couples, some of them were engaged couples, some of them were siblings, some of them were friends. Love is something that is so much bigger than just romanticism, but it is something that impacts so much of our life. And you don't have to look around too hard before you realize that not only does it affect our lives individually, but we as a people, as a culture, are obsessed with love. It's on the radio, it's on our movies, it's what we think about, it's what we talk about, it shows up in the newspaper, it shows up everywhere. Love is something that's always on our mind, but what if the way that we define love is wrong? What if we're defining our love based on the wrong things? And if so, how does that directly affect our relationships? Because if we get the definition of love wrong, if the filter through which we see love and relationships through is wrong, it's going to have an extreme impact on the relationships that we have. And so today we're going to explore, what is love? What is the definition of love? How do I know if this thing I'm feeling, if this behavior I have in my life is really loving, so that we can have the best relationships that we possibly can? Because the reality of it is that none of us get a pass from relationships. Even if you're kind of disillusioned or disenfranchised from relationships or things like that, relationships have shaped you. Relationships have shaped me. Even if you don't believe in marriage, your relationship with your parents has affected you, whether they were married or whether they weren't married, or your lack of a relationship with your parents has affected and shaped you. No matter who you are, you do not get a pass from relationships, because even if you do not believe in them, they have influenced and affected you. And the reality is, when it comes to relationships, some of our best and our worst moments have happened in the context of relationship. I mean, just think about high school. I would bet that a majority of our worst moments probably happened in high school. Maybe some of your best moments happened in high school. I don't know. But as you look at your life, you realize that some of your highest highs and lowest lows happen in the context of relationships. So it's so important that we get love right. It's so important that we know how to interact with our relationships right, because it affects so much of who we are and what we do. As we started out this year as a church, we really focused in on the two great commandments. Jesus says everything is wrapped up in these two things. First, love God with everything that you are. The first part of this year we've spent on really emphasizing how do we grow in our love for God. And as we're finishing that series and getting into this series, we're really honing in on the second commandment, love others as yourself. Because if you look at the cross, it's this interesting example of what Jesus died for. It's a vertical beam and a horizontal beam. And Jesus died not only so that our relationship with God would be a-okay, but so that our relationships with each other could change as well. Because God never intends for his redeeming love to influence you in a vacuum. It's always something that is meant to expand far beyond that and influence every area of your life, relationships included. So today we begin with learning how to love others by working on our definition of love, because learning to love others begins by defining love. So if you have your Bibles, whether they're digital, whether they're paper, however that is, turn to 1 Corinthians 13. That's where we're going to be today, and that's where we're going to be really looking at what is the framework I build the way I love on. What is the filter I run everything through to make sure that it's loving? And as you're turning there, it helps to know how this letter was written, what context it came out of. Because the Bible still speaks to us today, and part of the way we know how it speaks to us today is by finding out and learning how it spoke to its original hearers. So this book of Corinthians was written by this dude named Paul. And Paul wrote these letters to all kinds of churches to help them grow in their love for God and others. And this letter was written to this town called Corinth, a church in the town of Corinth. And a good way to look at Corinth is thinking of it as Viva Las Corinth. Corinth was the coastal Las Vegas of its day. And the negative things that are true for Vegas could be said for Corinth as well. In fact, in the first century, if someone referred to you as a Corinthian, that was a harsh slang term to show that you were kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel. Ugh, quit acting like a Corinthian, John. That's just no good. You're better than that. And the city of Corinth was like a lot of other cities of the day where they were very focused in on money, materialism, lust, false gods, all these different things. And a couple of the defining factors of Corinth is that it was known as the city of Aphrodite, the goddess of love. Now, Aphrodite was this Greek goddess who was really all about quote unquote love as the culture defined it. And in the city of Corinth, they were pretty loose when it came to the love thing. Monogamy wasn't really something that was really appreciated. They had a lot of festivals that involved some really funky, nasty kind of stuff. It was not so good. They were very loose in the love department. It was also known as the city that was very big on emperor worship, that they promoted nationalism and the emperor as God as a primary way of serving, of worship. In addition to that, the church in Corinth was experiencing some issues. There were lots of quarrels going on in Corinth because they were having a hard time staying faithful to God in such a secularized culture, and they were having a hard time getting along. Their interpersonal relationships in the church were marked by quarrel, were marked by conflict, were marked by a lot of pride issues going on based on who had the best gifts. And so Paul writes this letter to Corinth to show them how they can begin to have a gospel impact in their relationships with each other and the city around them to serve God the best way that they could. That is the context we look into. Very true for us today as it was for them. Love is a hard thing to get right in a culture that tries to redefine it in so many ways. So as we get into this today, we look at how he wants us to define love so that we could love everybody to the best of our ability. So we begin today in 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 31. The author says, "So you should earnestly desire the most helpful gifts." He just got done talking about all the ways the gifts of God can be used to help bind the church together. So you should desire helpful gifts to help the church and the community around you. But now, let me show you a way of life that is best of all. You think the gifts and the serving and the you having the coolest job in the church was the cool thing? That's great and all, but let me show you something better. We've been looking at what's good. Let me show you what's great. We've been looking at things that are important, but let me show you the thing that matters most. He goes on to say in verse number 1, "If I could speak all the languages of earth and of angels, but I didn't love others, I would only be a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal." What is he saying here? You can have a silver tongue. You can talk the talk. You can say things and speak so eloquently that people are just, falling at your feet, thinking that you're such a wonderful, amazing, well-spoken person. But if the things you're saying, even if they sound nice, are not coated in love, ultimately it sounds like a banging gong or a noisy, clanging cymbal. Not something beautiful, but something loud and shrill and annoying. Have you ever had someone compliment you and you just felt like you had to go take a shower afterwards because it was just kind of like, ugh. They said something nice to me, but I felt like there was like a layer of grime coming out of their mouth when they told me that. Sometimes we feel that way when we can pick up on the fact that the intent behind what someone says is not super genuine. And that's what Paul's getting at here. If you could say all these wonderful things, speak eloquently, say all these amazing things, but love isn't really the thing behind it all, it's just going to be a bunch of useless noise. Then he goes on to say in verse 2, if I had the gift of prophecy, and if I understood all God's secret plans and possessed all knowledge, and if I had such faith that I could move mountains, but I didn't love others, I would be nothing. And that's particularly relevant for us. We're really obsessed with this secret knowledge thing. That's why conspiracy theories are a really big thing. That's why everybody thinks that they know the secret thing. Oh, I know the truth about this particular person, or I know the truth about this particular social issue. If you only knew that what's really going on underneath all these things. We run rampant in that in our world right now. Why is that? It's because people feel like they need to have a sense of meaning in their lives. And if love is not the thing that defines you and gives your life meaning, you will go anywhere to try to find a narrative in this world that helps give you meaning and definition. So even though there are all these things that cycle around in our world and in our TVs and in our internet streams that maybe aren't truthful, maybe aren't centered on love, maybe aren't useful for building other people up, it's so easy to buy into that because we think it is giving us purpose. But ultimately, it's just giving us a false purpose that will ultimately crumble unless we build our lives on love. And then he says also, if I had the faith to move mountains, as if to say, if I actually do have the actions to back up what I'm saying, if I do have the ability to do these amazing, beautiful, wonderful things for God, but I don't actually have God's love, it don't really amount to nothing. Maybe you're so prone to doing, and in the sense of doing it, it's so easy to forget about God or forget about who you're doing it for. The Bible's saying here, sometimes we need to flip the script and make sure that we're experiencing love and wanting to show love to others before we do. We be before we do. Then he goes on to say in verse number 3, if I gave everything I have to the poor and even sacrificed my very body, sure, I could boast about it, but if I didn't love others, I would have gained nothing. You can even do things that are beautiful and wonderful and good. I don't think anybody's going to complain that giving something to the poor is a bad thing. But if love is not the motivating force behind you doing that, you may have done something good, but you wouldn't have really gained anything in your soul. Because your priorities and the way you're defining the actions of what you do is based on something that may not last. We look at these first couple verses, and one of the things that the author wants us to know is that our best moments mean nothing if they are not covered in love. That humbles us to help us make sure that we're defining love right and that our motives behind what we do are pure. But it also should give us a lot of really great encouragement that if we're taking the time to check our hearts, to make sure we're loving right, to make sure our motives are pure, that God wants to do something beautiful with them, even if we aren't at the moving mountain stage yet. God wants our motives to be pure, whether we're doing the little things or the big things. He actually says in his word that those who are faithful with the little things, he will trust with greater things. So he sets it right off the bat to say, all these gifts, all these great things, they need to be covered in love or they're going to be meaningless. Then he goes on to tell us what love looks like. And this is really important. We're going to really spend the chunk of our deep time here because this is the definition of love. If we wanted a textbook definition of love, this is what it's going to be based on Jesus and based on his word. Theologian by the name of N.T. Wright notes in this section that these next few verses are meant to be gone over slowly so that we really let it seep into our hearts and in our minds. We're going to see what love is, we're going to see what love is not, and how that is to be the lenses through which we view our entire world. He says, love is patient and kind. Love is not jealous or boastful or proud or rude. It does not demand its own way. It is not irritable, and it keeps no record of being wronged. So let's just take that bit by bit. What is love? Love is patient. That means it is willing to wait. That means that understanding that love sometimes is a slow process. That means sometimes deciding to love somebody means that you realize that they're not going to be perfect overnight. It means that we are all in the process of becoming more like Jesus if we've given our lives to him, and that process takes time. So we're not going to grow impatient with each other. We are going to be patient and loving with others. It also says that love is kind. That means love does not venomously speak destructive words to others. It means showing the kindness of Christ, the kindness Christ has shown us, that when we were broken, when we were messed up, when we were living rough lives, Jesus came and said, I love you, take my hand, look at a new way of doing life based on how I have loved you. Kindness means that you are lovingly showing someone the way of Christ. It also says that love keeps no record of wrongs. Can we be real for a minute? There's some of y'all that got a list under your bed right now. Maybe it's not a physical list, maybe it lives in your brain, but you got that wonderful elephant never forgets memory. And you remember every person who's wronged you, when they wronged you, how they wronged you, and what you think the motive was behind why they wronged you. And it says here that love keeps no records of being wronged. Here's what it's not saying. It's not saying stay in that toxic relationship. That's not what it's saying. It's not saying stay in that toxic environment where you are being destroyed. It's not saying continue to be abused. It's not saying that abuse and toxicity is okay. It is saying that we need to understand that we are all imperfect people and we're going to step on each other's toes sometimes. And when I step on your toe, don't assume that I gave you a sucker punch to the face, because maybe I just stepped on your toe. That means that I need to forgive you when you step on my toe and not assume that you were going in for the kill. And that I love you enough to talk through it with you and to work with you through it so that we can be restored. We're going to talk about that in greater depth next week. Love keeps no record of wrongs. This text also tells us what love isn't. It says love isn't jealous. What is jealousy? Jealousy is not being okay with what you have and what God has given you. The opposite of jealousy is contentment. So love is not jealous. It doesn't say, I need to take. It says, I'm okay with what I got because I got Jesus and I got these relationships around me. It says that love is not boastful. It's not bragging. It doesn't focus on its actions in order to have a place in the world. Your worth is not based on what you do. It is not proud. The opposite of being proud is being humble, knowing exactly who you are and not pretending to be more or less. Love is not rude. Being rude, although it might seem as innocent as I was mean to that supermarket clerk in the store, actually gets at something very dark. Rudeness is this very low form of dehumanizing others, saying that you are better than others, you are more elitist than others, and you deserve something from them. In a best case scenario, you're having an elitist attitude and lowering someone. At its absolute worst, you're actually dehumanizing somebody. And the opposite of rudeness is kindness. It also says that love does not demand its own way. That means it is not intrinsically self-taking, but self-giving. It says that love is not irritable or grumpy. And if we're honest, it's so easy to be irritable. I had a lot of trouble with this last week. I had too many things on my plate, and I had a really great event that I was going to, a really wonderful thing where we were celebrating some stuff, and I was so burnt out from the week that I was just kind of grumpy. And you know, when that happens, sometimes we need to just say, you know what, we need to name it. I'm being grumpy and irritable today because I had a long week. I need to just kind of get over myself. Sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do is kind of get over yourself when you're being irritable. The opposite of being irritable or grumpy is being understanding. Understanding why we feel that way and bringing it back into the context of life. I was irritable because I had too much on my plate. In the grand context of life, it wasn't going to kill me. If I could just understand that, if I could just kind of bring it back home and stop making such a big deal out of myself, it can move us towards greater understanding and greater kindness. And dealing with other irritable people should move us to trying to understand where they are coming from. We shouldn't be irritable. It's not a way of doing love, but as it happens, understanding and curiosity are ways that we move past the irritability and try to move to a place of understanding and kindness. He goes on to define it a little bit more. He says, love, it does not rejoice about injustice, but it rejoices whenever the truth wins out. This is going to hurt. On paper, we read that and we go, dude, none of us rejoice in injustice. Like, piece of cake. Of course we're going to rejoice when the truth wins out. This is super, super easy. But do we really? Do we make allowances for people we shouldn't when they are unjust? Do we make allowances for our political candidates if they are terrible people, but they do support the policies that we agree with? That's no good. Are we happy when we get our way, even when it's hurting other people? That would be not rejoicing when the truth wins out and rejoicing in injustice, which is all flip-flopped. Like, for example, are you okay with being a part of the cool clique, even if the clique you're involved with makes fun of the disenfranchised, makes fun of those who are hurting, makes fun of kind of the rejects in the room? That's no good. Do we greet the disenfranchised in our society with harsh words and criticism? If that's the case, we're rejoicing in injustice. If we make a snide comment about the homeless person, we're rejoicing in injustice, and that's no good. We really need to kind of analyze that, dissect it, look at our lives, and really ask ourselves, are we refusing to rejoice in injustice? Are we really rejoicing when the truth wins out? It's not enough that we just don't rejoice in injustice, but we also have to rejoice when the truth wins out. These things go together. They cannot be separated. To do one and not do the other is eliminating the whole verse. We must rejoice when the truth wins out, when injustices in our lives, in our families, and in our communities is confronted. When someone reveals something in us that isn't reflecting Christ and needs to be addressed, good golly, that hurts. But facing that bravely and boldly with the Holy Spirit is a way we rejoice in the truth and do not rejoice in injustice. Truth is an opportunity to see life as it really is, with the hope of what it could be. He goes on to say in verse 7, love never gives up, love never loses faith. It is always hopeful and endures through every circumstance. You know what he's saying here? Love sticks around. Love isn't easy. Love is not easy. Love doesn't reach its fullest potential in an hour and a half like Hallmark would say it does. Love takes work, love takes time, and love takes a commitment to say, I am sticking with this. with your marriages, with your friendships, with your family relationships. This isn't just a romantic thing. This is with relationships in general. And the hard times might not come at year one. They might not come at year 5. They might not come at year 15. They might not even come until much later. But hard times will come with every relationship. And the real test of love is sticking it out and sticking with it even when it's tough. And we do that because that's what Jesus did for us. It's what Jesus does for us every single day. He was with us during the dark times before we knew him. He's with you right now as you're still struggling with that thing. He's going to continue to be with you when you're walking in victory and helping others as well. We stick with it because Jesus sticks with it with us. And we show love to others by doing the same. These few verses make up our definition of what love is and what love is not. Loving others well requires a clear definition of what love is and what love is not. And these few verses give us that definition. And the author finishes up by saying this next. After he defines love, he says, prophecy and speaking in unknown languages, special knowledge, it will become useless. But love will last forever. What he's saying is gifts are good, gifts are great, gifts are wonderful. But love is the thing that'll last forever, not the gifts. He goes on to say in the next couple verses, now our knowledge right now is partial and incomplete. And even the gift of prophecy, the gift of revealing things about God, reveals only a part of the whole picture. And when the time of perfection comes, these partial things will become useless. What is he saying? He's saying that this side of eternity, we just see reflections. We just see bits and pieces of the whole picture. God is working a wonderful, redeemed love story out. And on this side of heaven, we're only seeing part of it, and he wants us to be a part of it. It's like a Bob Ross painting. I love Bob Ross. I could just watch Bob Ross for hours. And if you're not really a painter, you watch him paint, and it's random. Like he starts brushing all these random colors everywhere, and you're like, Bob, I know you're a great artist and all, but you're just throwing stuff everywhere. What's going on? And as the painting goes on, you see hills begin to take shape. You see clouds begin to emerge in the sky. It's almost like the picture comes to life before your very eyes the longer that you stare at it. These things that were just streaks of color and blobs become a beautiful masterpiece. That's what it's like with us on this earth moving towards eternity. God is painting with his on this canvas of our lives. He's painting with love and grace and goodness and redemption. And we are not going to be able to see that full picture until we're united with him and he brings all things to completion. But even though we can't see it yet, we are a part of this beautiful painting of love that he is painting on this world so that everybody could be a part of this beautiful, beautiful picture. He says in the next verse, when I was a child, I spoke and I thought and I reasoned like a child. But when I grew up, I put away childish things. There may be a time when it was okay to be obsessed with your gifts. You wanted to be useful for the kingdom of God. That's good. That's good. The gifts are good. They're not bad. But at a certain point, it's time to get older. At a certain point, it's time to get more mature. At a certain point, we need to realize that gifts and the ways that we serve God are great, but they are ways that we express the love of God. The goal is people experiencing the love of God, and our gifts are just a vessel for doing that. For a lot of us, God is asking us to take that next step of maturity and start taking love more seriously. It goes on to say in verse 12, now we see things imperfectly, he says it again, like puzzling reflections in a mirror. But then, when the day of completion comes, we will see everything with perfect clarity. All that I know now is partial and incomplete, but then I will know everything completely, just as God now knows me completely. It's okay that we're pursuing love. It's okay when we stumble up sometimes. It's okay that we don't have it all figured out. It's okay that we don't have this clear picture of how God's love is going to change lives. Because God knows us completely, and the God who knows everything completely is working in you and I, imperfect people, to bring about his love to this broken world. He doesn't ask for perfect people to spread his love. He asks for imperfect people to be known by him completely and become vessels of his perfect love. He finishes up by saying one of the most beautiful verses in the Bible. 3 things are going to last forever. The gifts aren't going to last forever. The gifts are only pointing people to Jesus now. But 3 things will last forever: faith, hope, and love. And the greatest of these is love. If we could sum up what he's saying in this last verse here really simply, it is this: invest in what lasts. It's just a bad investment to invest in the things that aren't going to last. It'd be like putting stock in VHS tapes. Hate to break it to you, but that's not going so well. Invest in what lasts. And the things that are going to last forever are faith, hope, and love. And the greatest of them is love. We look at these verses, and what Paul is trying to tell us is that many things will pass away, but the decision to give and to receive love will echo throughout eternity. Your decisions to love today have the potential to echo out forever. Why would we invest in the bogus things that are not going to last throughout the end of the week? Invest in what lasts. Receiving love from the King of Kings, Jesus Christ, and giving that love to others so that they may see his reflection. That is what it is all about. So we're going to have a slide up here. And this slide has our list of what love is, and it has our list of what love is not. And I want you to ask yourself something right now. There's a little blank there. Blank is or blank is not. Every time it says love, I want you to replace it with your name and ask if it could be true of you. Is Andrew patient? Is Andrew kind? Does Andrew keep no record of wrongs? Does Andrew rejoice in truth? Or is Andrew jealous? Is Andrew boastful? Is Andrew irritable? Does Andrew rejoice in injustice? Take a minute and ask yourself that right now. I would invite you, it's just right there in 1 Corinthians 13. You can check it out on your phone. However, check in with that a few times this week and put your name there. And then after you've done some work with that, ask someone close to you if these things could or could not be true of you. Might hurt a little bit, might be kind of helpful in some ways. But it is a way we can begin to learn whether or not we are defining our lives based on love as God defines it. Not a self-taking love, but a self-giving love. Let us learn how to define love so that we can run all of our attitudes, all of our behaviors through the filter of selfless love. We won't get it perfect. I mean, we might go from one day to the next and really mess it up. But here's the thing. These things are filters through which we run our life through. But if we want to see what the ultimate definition of love is, it is not a list, it is a person. It is the person, the only person who perfectly fulfilled this list, Jesus Christ. And the beautiful thing about it is that when I'm not patient, when I'm not kind, the days that I'm jealous and I mess it up, Jesus Christ has gone and perfected it for me. He's going to pick us up when we fall. He's going to help us get better at it. He is going to work at it because he has perfectly taken care of it himself. I mean, just put Jesus' name there and think about it. Jesus is patient. He was patient while I was still messing up. He was patient when I was still living my life and making a wreck of all my relationships. He was patient with me. Jesus is kind. When I deserved to be thrown out, Jesus Christ welcomed me in. He showed me kindness and love and grace. Jesus is not jealous. He doesn't think he needs to get all these things to be fulfilled. He's fulfilled with the love of the Father. Jesus is not boastful. He doesn't feel like he needs to validate himself. His love speaks for himself. Jesus is not proud. He knows exactly who he is. He didn't act with this elitist attitude when he was on earth. Jesus is not rude. Jesus does not devalue or dehumanize people. Jesus does not demand his own way. In fact, he gave up his preferences to die on a cross for you and for me. Jesus is not irritable, but he is oh so kind to us. Jesus keeps no record of being wrong, even though we've hurt Jesus again and again and again and again and again with our behavior and the way we've turned away from him. He still loves us. He does not rejoice in injustice. Jesus can't stand it when people are marginalized. Jesus can't stand it when people are dehumanized and hurt. But instead, Jesus rejoices when the truth wins out and he works towards the restoration of broken people. Jesus never gives up on you. Jesus never loses faith. Jesus is always hopeful. Jesus endures through every circumstance. And he showed it to us when he went to a cross. He went to a cross for you and for me, and he died a brutal death for things that he didn't deserve. He took your sin, my sin, the sin of every person and every injustice on the earth so that we could see what love is and that we could experience what love is. So I invite you, let the love of Jesus, the way he has defined it in his life, the way he has embodied love as it is defined in here, I invite you, allow yourselves to grow in love by learning how to receive love from the one who knows you completely and loves you perfectly, Jesus Christ. And as we do that, the natural byproduct is that we will grow in our love for others. Would you pray with me today? Father God, love ain't easy. Maybe we go through this today and we realize how short we fall, God, but we're thankful. We're thankful that you yourself are love. We're thankful that you loved us even when we were broken and messed up, God. And Jesus, we ask today that you would help us. Help this definition of love that we've seen today become true of us, that when people see us, they see people who are kind, people who are patient, people who keep no record of wrongs, people who are not jealous or boastful, God, but people who love you and want your love to influence all of their relationships. Father God, we love you. We thank you. And it's in your holy and precious name that we pray today.